So in last section we discussed about database. What is mean by database? What is the data and what is DBMS and RDBMS? What is Unicode and non-Unicode databases and what is the structured query language, categories and keywords, right? Now
Yes, sir.
let's see. Till now, whatever we discussed that completely with it's a very basic one. It's not related with only one database. But now, from now onwards, we're gonna discuss completely with SQL Server.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, first we'll see how many types of databases we have in SQL Server. In SQL Server, we have two types of databases. In SQL Server, we have two types of databases. So the first one is system database. System databases, and the second one is user defined databases. So first let's start with system databases. What is mean by system databases? System databases are nothing but pre-built databases. You'll get these databases as part of SQL Server installation. Whenever you install the SQL Server, you'll get some databases as a pre-built one. So we'll call that one as system databases. So each database is meant for some purpose. Each system database is meant for some purpose. We'll discuss that one. But before that, first let's see how many types of system databases we have in SQL. So we have four types of system databases are there. One is master database, and the second one is model database, and the third one is um, tempdb, and the fourth one is MSDB. So we have four types of system databases. One is master, model, tempdb, and MSDB. So first let's start with master. So what is the master data? What master database will do? So whenever you log into the server, this master database is selected as the default databases. So this master database will have the complete system level information, like what is the the usernames, passwords, new database names, paths of the databases, sizes of the databases, everything will be saved in your master database. The complete system level information will be saved in your databases. Disk space, usages, DBMS configurations, complete information, the complete system server information will be saved in your master database. So if you don't have this master database, if because of any issues, if suppose this master database has crashed, then think that you can't appear SQL Server, because the server don't know whether this guy has having the permission or not, and the server don't know where the databases are available, and it don't know what is the name of the database and path of the database, size of the database, and who are having the permissions. The complete information is collapsed, the complete information is crashed, so you can't up the SQL Server. So this master database is the key one, which is having the complete server level information. So that's why your DBAs always they'll try to take the backup of this master database on regular intervals. Depends on their service policy. Okay, and the next database is model database. So model database acts like a template. So whenever you create a new database, so in the backend it will have some structure, right? So without any structure, no object will be created. So database will also have some basic structure. That structure is nothing but a template. That template will be available in your model database. Let's say, for example, this is the structure. Let's say, let me take the pen here. Um, this just think that this is the structure. So whenever you create a new database, the same structure, whenever you create a new database, this model will be inherited. Now it is creating a database. So I'm creating a new database. So whenever I create a new database, it will go and inherit that one from your model database. The same template will be copied. And after creating the new database, if you want to make any changes, you can make it. You can change it. But the changes won't reflect on your model database. Whatever the changes you are doing to your new database, it will be there itself. It won't go and affect your model database. So model database acts like a template. Whenever you create a new database in SQL Server, the model database will be inherited. So if you change anything, that changes won't reflect in your model databases. And if you change anything in the model database, now this change won't reflect on the old databases. This change will reflect on the newly created database. Already I created this database, so the change won't reflect here. But if I create any new database now, that change will reflect here now. 2, 3, 4. So this is model database. So it's just blueprint, simple to say. So you have created one diagram. You've drawn a diagram, and after that you've taken one printout. So after taking the printout, if you change anything in the diagram, that change won't reflect in that printout, right? If you take the printout again, that printout will take the changes. So whatever the changes you have done to this model database, that won't reflect on the old databases, but the changes will be reflected on the newly created databases. After making the changes in model database, if you create any new databases, that databases will get the changes. That is model database. And temp DB, temporary database. With the name, it's very clear. Database, wherever we store the data, we'll call that one as a database. Otherwise, database is used to store the data. Temporary DB, I want to store the data for temporary purpose. Simple. So whenever your intention is to store the data for a temporary purpose, so in some cases we need to store the data for temporary purpose. When we need to store the data for temporary purpose and on which cases we need to store the data on temporary purpose, you'll came to know that one in further sessions. But as of now, the definition of tempdb is whenever you want to store the data for temporary purpose, then we'll go with this temporary databases. So whenever you start your SQL Server, a fresh copy of temporary database will be created. Even the template will be inherited from your model database. Once you close the server, automatically the data from the temporary database will be erased. Automatically, no need to delete the data manually. Automatically the data will be deleted from the server. And when you up again, it will create a fresh copy of a database which is inherited from your model database. That is tempdb. And the next one is MSDB, Microsoft databases. So this Microsoft database is used by the SQL Server agent, which is used to send the alerts and to run the jobs and all. Let's say I'm writing one procedure. I've written one procedure where that procedure is having some functionality like every day morning 7 a.m. I'll get the files into this particular folder, and at 7:05 a.m. I need to load the data from these files to my tables. So this is the algorithm I've written in my stored procedure. So it has to look for the files in the folders. After that, it has to load the data from files to tables. And this procedure has to run every day morning 7:15 a.m. So for that, what you have to do? Every day morning 7 a.m. you have to log into your server. After that, exactly at 7:15 a.m. you have to run that procedure. It is not possible in all the days, right? In all the cases, it's not possible. Sometimes you may miss the time. Sometimes you may get some holidays. Sometimes you may be in leave. Instead of executing the procedures manually, I want to make that one as a dynamic one. Every day morning 7 a.m. execute this procedure. I'll give this call to my server. So what my server has to do is every day morning 7:15 a.m. this procedure it has to trigger. It has to execute. So to make it as a dynamic, we need to schedule that one. Every day morning 7:15 a.m. run this procedure. So if you want to run that schedule, you have to create a job. That jobs will be stored in your Microsoft database. That means if you don't have this Microsoft database, you can't automate your work. So these are the 4 system databases which are meant for different purposes. So first we'll see where to find the system databases and all. So to find the system databases are the one which you'll get as part of SQL Server installation. So first let me open that SQL Server, and after that I'll show you where to find these databases. So to open the SQL Server, just go to Start, All Programs, and in All Programs you will find your server Microsoft SQL Server 2012 or 2008 R2 or 2014 or 2015 or 2016, whatever the version it will be. So I installed 2012 version. So let me open this Microsoft SQL Server 2012. In this you will find SQL Server Management Studio. In short, we'll call it as SSMS, which is the framework which is designed to connect with your databases. So now it is opening the SQL Server Management Studio. And first it is asking to which server type you want to connect. I want to connect with the database engine. And what is the server name here? Server name is nothing but computer name. Where your server is located, that is nothing but your server name. Let's say for example, this is the computer where I've installed my SQL Server, and this is the computer from which I'm gonna connect with my server. So now to connect here, I need to give this computer name. In my server, when I open SSMS in my local computer, I need to give the computer name of this as a server name. But in my case, this is my computer, and in my computer itself I've created, so this is your computer and this is your remote computer where you have your SQL Server. So to connect with that server, you have to give the server name as this computer. And now in my case, this is my computer, and in my computer itself I've installed I installed the SQL Server, right? So here in real time, server names are nothing but your DBS will provide the server names. So in real time, the server names won't be like Vijay_PC or Srikant-PC. It won't be like this. Server names will be like XYZ_Asia Pacific. Some odd and awkward names will be there. Otherwise, some IP address like 192.168.101.1, something like that. Some IP addresses. So don't worry, your DBS will give the server names. But in our case, my server is installed in my local machine. So to connect with the local server, you can give it as localhost or local or dot or your computer name. So you can give any one of these 4 to connect with the local server. So what I'm doing is I'm going with this localhost. And the next one is authentication. What does it mean by authentication? Authentication is nothing but it is checking whether you are a genuine user or not to access the data from that particular database. to access the data from that server. So we have two types of authentication. One is Windows authentication and the second one is SQL Server authentication. Windows authentication is nothing but with which credentials you logged into your system. That credentials will be treated as the parameters to connect with the server. And if you select this one as SQL Server authentication, you have to provide this login ID and password. So your DBS will provide this login ID and password, no need to worry. But in my case, my server is installed in local machine, so I can go with this Windows authentication, no issues. Now let me click on connect. Now it will connect with your database engine. And if you expand, see, this is the local host, this is nothing but your local computer, local server. And if you expand this databases folder, you'll find system databases. If you expand the system databases, here you'll find 4 databases, that is master database, model database, MSDB and tempdb. So these are the 4 system databases. So now let me show you how this model database acts like a template. So for that, first we need to create the databases. So how to create the databases using queries, I'll explain that one next. But as of now, to discuss the usage of this model database, I'm just explaining how to create the databases and how to create the tables using some GUI, graphical user interface. So to create a database, just right click here. Before that, let me show you show the structure of model database. Expand the model and tables, nothing is there. System tables, nothing is there. And when I expand the views, when I expand the system views, see, these are all the views are available in your model database. So whenever you create a new database, all these views will be copied into your newly created databases. Let me show you that. To create the database, just right click on the database, new database. I'm giving the database name as XYZ. Now let me click on OK. See, when I'm giving the name as XYZ, in the bottom it has created 2 files. One is primary file and the second one is log file. We'll discuss about these files, what these files will do and all. But let me click on OK as of now. Now see, XYZ database is created. Now let me expand this XYZ tables. Nothing is there in system tables. But if you expand the views, expand system views, see, all these views were copied into newly created database. Now let me change the structure of XYZ. So in XYZ database, I'm creating a new table. Let me right click on the tables, click on new table. So don't worry about these creations because I'll explain everything next. What is this column name and data types and all. ID, envarchar, name, something. I'm creating a table with 2 columns, that is ID and name. Now it is, when I close this one, it is asking me to save the changes. Yes, I want to save the changes and I want to give the name as customers. So I've created a table called customers in XYZ database. Now let me expand these tables. So let me refresh it. Now you can find this customers. But if you go and check the model database, let me refresh this model database tables, you won't find the table. So whatever the changes you have done to this XYZ database, it won't reflect in the model database. And whatever the change you'll do in this model database, it won't reflect on the existing databases. Let me show you that. Let me create a new table in model database. New table, with ID, name. Again with 2 columns, I'm creating a new table in model database, and now I'm naming the table as employee. Now let me click on OK. Now let's refresh these tables. Employee. If you go and check this XYZ database tables, see, the change won't reflect here. But if you create a new database now, and now I'm creating a new database ABC, the changes will be reflected in your ABC database. So where you'll find it. Let me check it where that is. Yes, ABC tables. Now you can find this employee database. This is nothing but the template. So whatever you have, whatever the structure you have in your model database, that same structure will be copied into your newly created database. Whenever you create a new database, that will be inherited from model databases. So this is the use of model database. Sure, DBS will use very frequently. So for example, the actual use where they'll use this one, I'll explain that one here. See, Tata is one organization. So under Tata, so many wings are there, right? So Tata is having so many wings like Tata Steel, Tata Salt, Tata Finance, Tata Motors, Tata Motors, some Tata IT, like this. So Tata is having so many wings. Now, to run any company, I started a new company. To run any company, we need employees, right? So we have to create one employee table, and we have to give salaries to employees. They won't work for free, and employees will take the leaves, and that leave details and date information we have to store it in dates table, and employees will work in different departments, and something like that. So I need these tables are mandatory, right? All these tables are mandatory in all these databases. So what you have to do, I need to create these 5 tables in steel database, in salt database, in finance database, in motors database, and in IT database. So 5 common tables we have to create in 5 different databases. So 25 times I need to write the same statements. Instead of that, what you can do, before creating these databases, first create that 5 tables in model database. After that, create the databases. What happens? Automatically these 5 tables will be copied into your newly created databases. After that, if you open a new branch, new company, like Tata is opened one new company like jewelry. So this jewelry company also needs these tables, right? So automatically these tables will be copied into your jewelry database. No need to create them again. So that is the use of model databases. So this is about 4 system databases: master, model, tempdb, and msdb. So that is system database. So the next one is user defined database. So what is mean by this user defined database? It's pretty clear with the name. If a database is created by a user, is nothing but user defined databases. So user defined databases are the one which are created by the user. So while creating the database, the user has to specify a name to the databases. Just now I created 2 databases. One is XYZ database and one is ABC database, right? So those are nothing but user defined databases. So let me delete these databases. I don't need this one. So to delete the database, I'm just using this delete button. And I will delete this employee table from model database, because whenever I create a new database, that template will be copied into new database. That's why I'm just deleting this one. So this is about system databases and user defined databases.
Yes.
So now let's see how to create the database and all. So before going to creation of the databases, first we need to know about database files. So what are mean by these database files? See, whenever you database where will store the data in database, but the data where the data will go and store in the databases. So even you are storing the data in databases, in the backend, the data will be stored in some files. So we'll call that one as database files. We'll call that one as data files. So we have three types of data files are there. The first one is primary data file. Primary data file, or we can call it as master data file. Oh, sorry, not master, it's a main data file. Main data file. So the extension for this one is .mdf. .mdf, master data file. And the second type of file is secondary data file. Secondary data file. So the extension of the secondary data file is .ndf. And the third one is transaction log file. Transaction log file or log data file. So the extension of this one is .ldf. So these are the three files. We'll call that one as data files. So first let's start with primary data file .mdf. So this primary data file .mdf file will contain the startup information of the database. So where the database is located and where the database files were located and which user is having the permission, and whatever the data you are storing in the database, the complete data will be stored in your .mdf file. If this is your main data file, so you are storing 1 core records now, the complete data will be stored in your master data file, main data file, primary data file, whatever it may be. Which means at any point of time, if you lost this .mdf file, that means no data will be available in your database. The complete data will be gone. So the complete data, whatever the data you are trying to store in the database, the complete data will be stored in your main data file. So every database must have at least one primary data file, that is mandatory. Okay, that is mandatory file. Without this .mdf file, you can't create the database. Because our ultimate intention to create the database is to store the data. If you are creating the database without the file which is used for storing, so what is the purpose? There is no use, right? So that's why this primary data file is mandatory, and whatever the data you are storing in the database, the complete data will go and store in the .mdf file. Let's say, for example, I'm creating the database. I'm just showing the path for this .mdf file in C drive. As of now, in C drive, I have 10 GB space. Okay. So this .mdf, so I stored that file in C drive, and in C drive, as of now, I have 10 GB space. And whatever the data we are storing, the complete data will go and store in .mdf file, right? Now when I created that mdf file, when I given the created the database in C drive, I have 10 GB. Now I've inserted the data. I'm keep on inserting the data into the database. Until now 9.5 GB data I've inserted, and only the lefted place is 500 MB, and still 10 GB data is coming. I need to store 10 GB more data. So in my C drive, I have only 500 MB. So where can I store the remaining data? So in primary data file, we can store the complete data, and one database can have only one primary file. So then where can I store the remaining data? That remaining data, you can store it in secondary data files. So whenever you don't have a good amount of space in your main data file, you can create the secondary data files in some another drives, that is D drive or E drive or somewhere, and you can give that information to the database or master data file saying that if you don't have enough space, then store the data in the secondary data file which I created in D drive. Now in D drive also the space is completed. So what I can do, again I'll create one another .ndf file in some another drives, that is E drive, and I'll give the information to the master data file saying that I've created one another .ndf file in E drive. So you can store the data in this secondary data file. So these secondary data files are also used to store the data, but these files are optional. When you don't have enough space in your master data file, then only we'll go with secondary data file. Or another advantage of another usage is whenever you want to split the data into multiple disks, then we'll go with this secondary data files. As I said, these secondary data files are optional, and the main advantage is whenever you want to separate the data into multiple disk drives, then we'll go with this secondary data files. And the next one is .lef file. So when we go with this .lef file, let's say this is your .lef file. So before going that, let's say as a developer, first I'm inserting 100 records into the table. Out of these 100 records, 50 records for Hyderabad and 25 records for Bangalore and 25 records for Chennai. Okay, so I've inserted these 100 records, so that 100 records will go and store in master data file, right? And now by mistakenly my client asked me to delete Bangalore data, but by mistakenly I've deleted Chennai data. So what data you'll find in your master data file? Only 50 records which belongs to Hyderabad and 25 records which belongs to Bangalore, right? So my client asked me to delete the Bangalore records, but by mistakenly I've deleted Chennai records. So once you delete the records, that data won't be available in your master data file. Then how can you restore the data again? If you ask your client, then he'll scold you. It's your job to restore now. So in that case, what we can do is we'll go with this .ldf file. So this .ldf file is used to maintain the log information, which is used to recover the database. So whatever the data you are inserting into the database, when it is inserting a record into this database, the same information will be logged into your log file saying that so and so record was inserted by so and so developer into so and so table on so and so time. That is nothing but log information. In the same way, whenever I'm deleting the records also, it will store the same log information saying that so and so record was deleted by so and so user from so and so table on so and so time. So now using that log information, will recover the data into our master data file again. So this transaction log file or log data file is used to hold the log information that is used to recover the database. So the advantage is, if you don't have this log data file, then you can't recover your databases. If suppose at any point of time if your master data file is crashed, then how can I restore the data? That log information is available in this .ldf file. Using that log information, you can restore the data. But if you don't have this log file, then we can't restore it. So this log data file is mandatory, and one database can have only one log file. Master data file and log data file, these two files are mandatory. and one database can have only one master data file, and one database can have only one log file. Okay, so this is about files. Now let's see how to create the databases now. So we have discussed about databases, and we have discussed about files. Now let's see how to create database using queries. So to create the database using queries, see, first I've connected with the SQL Server Management Studio. After that, to write the queries, first you need to open your query analyzer. To open that one, just click on this new query. Then it will open one window where you can write your queries. And when I click on, whenever I connected with one server, see, automatically it has connected with the master database. So that is the default one. Now let me create the database. To create database, let me show you the syntax. Create is the keyword which is used to create any object. So which object you are creating? I'm going to create one database. So create database name. So the example is, so I want to create a database with the name sample. So let me create it. Create database sample. Now let's create it. Already existing. Same database is there. So let me give some another name. Sample DB. Sample database. Now commands completed successfully. That's it. Now if you go and check the databases, you'll find, let me refresh it, sample DB. This is how you can create the database. Very simple. Create database name. With which name you want to create the database, just give the name of the database here. That's it. Okay. Now, while creating the database, my client asked me to create a database with the name sample DB. Now he is asking me to otherwise, before going to that one, first I want to know the definition of the database. To view the definition of the database. So what is mean by definition? Definition is nothing but, not like database is nothing but wherever we store the data in rows and columns. It's not definition. Definition is nothing but I want to know the name of the database, ID of the database, when the database is created, who created the database, and what are the files which are for the database, and what is the location of the data files, and what is the size of the data files. That is nothing but definition. So whenever you want to know the definition of the database, we have a system stored procedure called sp_helpdb. So sp is nothing but stored procedure. That is a system stored procedure which you will get as part of SQL Server installation. So sp_helpdb is used to know the definition of the database. sp_helpdb db name. So I want to know the definition of sample DB. So sp_helpdb. What is the name of the database? Sample DB. So this is sample database. If you want to know the definition of some another database, let me show you that. sp_helpdb sample. Now let's execute and see. Where is that? Oh, I'm executing that one. Sample. See, name of the database is sample, and size this one, and who created this guy created the database, and this is the ID, and when this database is created on May 7 2016, this database is created, and what are the files of the databases. One is primary file and second one is log file, and what is the size and the location. And if you want to know the definition of help DB, click on execute. So sp underscore help db sample db. Then see, this database is created on June 21 2016, and these are the files which are for sample database. This is the definition of the database. Now while creating the database, my client asked me to create a database with the name sample db. Now he is asking me to rename the database. So whenever you want to rename the database, you have one system store procedure called sp underscore rename db old db name comma new db name, and the example is sp underscore help db. So while creating the database, he asked me to create the database with sample db. Now he is asking me to give another name like sample db. Sam is the new name. Now let's exit this one. See, the database name Sam has been set. Now let's refresh the databases and let's see Sam. This is how we can rename the databases. Now my intention is I want to drop the database. So we have created the database and we have altered the database. Now I want to rename the database. So to rename the database, to drop the database, drop database name. So the example is drop database. What is the name of the database? I want to drop SAM database. So let me exit it. Commands completed successfully. So to exit this one, I'm using this exit button. Otherwise, you can use that F5 short key. Let me refresh the databases. See, the SAM is deleted, dropped from your server. This is how you can create the databases. Okay. You can create and you can alter and you can drop the database. So now we have created the database. So what is the next step after creating the database? So first you need to have a server. So this is the top level. We have to install it. After installing the server, one server can have n number of databases. And after creating the database, we need to create tables. We need to create the tables. So one database can have n number of tables, and one table can have n number of records, n number of data. So we have installed the server and we have created the database. And what is the next step? The next step is creating tables. So now let's see how to create the tables. So to create the tables, first what I'll do is I just deleted the database, right? So let me create a new database. I'll delete this sample database again. I'll create that one as a new one now. So how to create the database? Create database name sample. Now let's create it. Commands completed successfully. Now my intention is I want to create the tables on sample database. To create tables, so whenever you want to work on a database on one specific database, first, before executing any query, first of all make sure that you have pointed to the correct database or not. So if your job is to work on sample database, just select the database and execute your queries. Then only that work will be stored in your sample database. If you pointed to this training database and if you do the work, now that complete work will be stored in training database, not on sample database. So first of all, you have to make sure that whether you have pointed to the correct database or not. Once you make sure that one, then do the remaining work. Okay. So my intention is I want to create the tables I want to work, my database is sample database. So I've selected the sample database. Now let's see how to create the table. So first of all, what is mean by table? So table is a logical storage unit, consists of rows and columns. Rows and columns. So this is the structure of a table. Rows and columns. So a database can have as many as tables as required. So depends on the size of the database. Okay. So before going to the creation of tables, first let's see about data types. So what is meant by data type? So with the name, it's pretty clear. What is the type of data? That is data type. So what kind of data you want to store in that particular column? Let's say account ID, account number. So account number always will add numerical information only, right? No one will give the alphabets. Otherwise, employee IDs will have only integer information. So in that particular column, employee ID is one column. This is employee ID. In this column, I want to store only numerical information. This column has to accept only numerical data. Then we need to specify the data type as int. So the type of that ID column is int, so that that ID column will accept only integer data. And name, this second column is name. Names will have alphabets and special characters also, right? So it has to accept any character, whether it may be alphabet or special character or numerics. So for that, varchar of n is nothing but length. If you give 20, then the server will accept only 20 characters. If you give the length as 10, then it will accept only 10 characters. So varchar will accept any character. And char of n, again same. N is nothing but length. If you give the length as 10, it will accept only 10 characters. And this char data type will accept any character. Both are similar, right? Varchar and char, both are accepting the characters. Both are used to accept any character, whether it may be alphabet or numeric or special character. Then what is the difference? We'll see the difference, but before that, let me complete the remaining data types. Let's say we have another column called comments. Comments, one guy will write the comment in two words, I mean two characters. One guy will write the comment in 20 characters, one guy in 200 characters, one guy in 2000 characters, one guy in 2 lakh characters. We don't know that one. But my intention is whatever the comment he has written, I want to store the complete comment in my table. If I give it as varchar of n, varchar of 2 lakh or 2000, if suppose that guy written the comment in only 200 characters, I can't go like that, right? If I give the varchar of 200 for comment, suppose if the guy is giving comments in 2000 characters, what about the remaining? It will accept only 200 characters. It won't accept the remaining, right? In that case, we'll go with the data type called text. So this text will accept n number of characters. Irrespective of the length, it will accept all the characters into that particular column. And date of birth is one column. So that column has to accept only dates. In that case, go with date data type. Only date. 2016. 2020. 12, 21. 2020 is the year, 12 is the month, and 20 is the date. Date of joining. That column has to accept Otherwise, again, date of birth, that column has to accept date along with the time. What is birth date and time? So 2020, 12th month, 21st date, some 16 hours, 49 minutes, 58 seconds. So along with the date along with the time, I want to store the date. So in that case, go with date time. And in that employee table, I have one column called photo. So that photo column has to accept only images, not the remaining values. Then we'll go with a data type called image. And you have a column, salary column. So salary is money values, right? So that column has to accept only money values. In that case, go with a data type called money. So these are the different data types. So these are the examples of the data types. So float, I hope you know about float values. So what is mean by float? Decimals. So if you want to store the decimal values, then go with float like this. And some boolean values. Boolean is nothing but true or false. So these are all the data types which you can specify to the columns while creating the table, while declaring the structure of the table. And we'll call these data types as non-Unicode data types. So what is meant by non-Unicode? Again the same. These data types will accept only one language data that depends on your code page. If the code page is English, these data types will accept only English data. If the code page is Telugu, it will accept only Telugu data. If the code page is Spanish, it will accept only Spanish data. Now, what are non-Unicode database? Sorry, what are Unicode data types now? Now, from these data types, which data types are dependent on language? Integers. 1 to 3 will remain same in all the languages, right? Date will remain same in all the languages. Date time will remain same. Image will remain same. Money will remain same. Float will remain same. Booleans will remain same. But only the changes you will find in alphabets. So varchar, char and text are different. So if you want to define those data types as Unicode data types, then specify it as n varchar of n. So n varchar of n is nothing but Unicode data types. So it will accept any language data. N char of n. Any language data. N text. This data type will accept any language data. So these are Unicode data types. Clear? So what is the difference between non-Unicode data types and Unicode data types? Non-Unicode data types will accept only one language data, whereas Unicode data types will accept any language data. Non-Unicode data types will accept only one language data, whereas Unicode data types will accept any language data. And second difference is to store one character. So non-Unicode data types will take 1 byte to store one character. Example, suppose if it is varchar of 20. Non-Unicode data types will take 1 byte space to store one character. So I'm trying to store 20 characters, so it will take in total 20 byte space. Whereas Unicode data types will take 2 byte space to store one character. So 2 bytes, example, n varchar of 20. That is 40 bytes, right? So it will take double of non-Unicodes. So non-Unicode data types will take only 1 byte to store one character, and Unicode data types will take 2 bytes to store one character. That is the difference between Unicode and non-Unicode data types. Okay, now let's see the difference between varchar varchar and char. So both are used to save all the characters, right, based on the length. Then what is the difference between these varchar and char? So char is nothing but a fixed length. Let's say if I give the data type char to a column with the length 20. Let's say to name column I'm giving the data type as char of 20, then it will take 20 characters as a fixed one. Even though you may give the 20 characters or you may not give the 20 characters. Let's say my name is Vijay, so I'll insert only Vijay, so only 5 characters, right? It has to store the data in only 5 characters, but it will take the fixed length as 20. It won't decrease the size. It will freeze the remaining characters, remaining size also, remaining space also. But if you go with varchar, then it will take the characters. It will freeze the character space based on the data whatever you are inserted into that column. Name varchar of 20, and I'm inserting Vijay. Then it will take only 5 character space. It will leave the remaining 15 characters. But at any point of time, it may take back that space. Let's say my name is Vijay, I just inserted it as Vijay, and after that I'm updating my name to VijayReddy. So again it will take 5 characters back. So char is a fixed one, where varchar is not fixed. Depends on the data, whatever depends on the characters whatever you have inserted into that column. Based on that, it will adjust the size of that column automatically. So that is the difference between char and varchar. So the most frequently used data type for to store the characters and all, varchar. Okay, whenever you want to go with a fixed length, let's say gender is one column. Into that gender column I want to store it as M or F, so only one character. So in that case, instead of going with varchar of 1, I'll go with char 1. I'll go with only char, because that is a fixed one. It won't look for whether I need to store one character or zero character. It won't like that. It will take it as a fixed one. Okay, so this is about data types. So now let's see how to create the table. So to create the table, first let's see the syntax. Create table, table name, and what is the structure of the table name, what is the name of column, and along with the column mandatorily you have to specify the data type. What kind of data you want to store in that particular column. Column 0 data type, column 1 data type, column 2 data type, comma, like that. You can have 1024 columns to a table. Just remember that a table can have 1024 columns. Column 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Column 10, 23. Okay, so now let's create a table. Now my intention is I want to create a table. Create table. My client asked me to create a table with the name EMP with the structure ID. So I'm giving the data type as int, so that that column will accept only integers. Name, I'm giving the data type as varchar of 20, so it will accept it will accept all the characters where the length is up to 20 characters. ID, name, and department, otherwise ID, name, this date of birth. I'm giving the data type as date, time. Now let me select this complete table and let me exit it. I'm just using this F5 shortcut. Commands completed successfully. Now let me expand these databases. Let me expand this sample. Let me first of all refresh this one. Sample tables. You can find this employee. Now if you expand this EMP table, you'll find all the columns. If you expand the columns folder, you'll find what are all the columns that you have added into the table. That is ID, int name, varchar of 20, date of birth, DOB, that is date time. So this is how we can create the tables. So here I just created a table with 3 columns. You can create table with 1024 columns, up to 1024. Okay. Now, while creating the table, my client asked me to create a table with the name EMP. Now he is asking me to rename the table. So to rename the table, we have a system stored procedure called sp_rename. And what is the old table name, comma, what is the new table name. So sp_rename is used to rename your tables. So let's see. So while creating the table, he asked me to create the table with EMP, sp_rename. So the old table name is EMP. Now he is asking me to rename the table to employee. So let me exit it. Employee. Now let me refresh this sample database. Now if you check the tables, you will find the table name as employee. Employee with columns ID, name, date of birth. Okay. Now while creating the table, my client asked me to create a table with EMP or employee, and he asked me to give the column name as DOB. Now he is asking me to rename the column name. So let's see how to rename the column name. So while creating, he asked me to give the column name as DOB. Now he is asking me to give the complete name like date of birth. So to rename the column, sp_rename is a system procedure which is used to rename the column, table name dot which column name you want to rename, comma, and with which name you want to rename the old column name. sp_rename employee tables DOB column. I want to rename it as date of birth. Sorry, let me specify them in single quotes. Now let's exit and see now. See, I changed the name of the column. Let me refresh the columns. Now you can find it, date of birth. This is how you can rename the columns. Okay. So I just changed the structure of the table. To change the structure, to rename the tables and to rename the columns, I use these two procedures. Now let's see how to modify the tables. So what is meant by modifying? Let's see that one. So to modify the tables, so whenever you want to alter the table, whenever you want to alter an object, we'll go with a keyword called alter, right? So using that alter keyword, we'll see how to alter the tables. See here, while creating the table, my client asked me to create a table with the name employee and the structure ID, name, and date of birth. And while giving the name column, he asked me to create it as a non-Unicode column. So I've given it as varchar of 20. Now he is asking me to change the data type. He is asking me to convert that column from non-Unicode to Unicode, which means he is asking me to change the data type. To change the data type. So whenever you want to change the data type of a column, that is nothing but we are trying to alter the table. Alter table. Which table you are altering? So first let's see the syntax here. Which table you are altering? Just give the name of the table and what you want to do by altering the table. I want to alter the column. Alter column. Which column you want to alter? Just specify the name of the column and specify the column specifications. Example, alter table name is employee, alter column. So which column you want to alter? I want to alter the name column from varchar to nvarchar of 40. See, I changed the data type and length too. Let's execute. Commands completed successfully. Now let's refresh the columns. Now you can find name nvarchar of 40. This is how you can change the data types. And don't think that don't try to convert that varchar into integers. It's not possible because integers will accept only numerics and varchars will accept alphabets too. So if you're trying to convert that varchar into integers, so varchar is accepting all the characters, whereas integers is accepting only one character, sorry, only numerics. So it is not possible to convert that one. So that cases are not possible. So only you can convert the data types into compatible formats. So again, we'll find that conversions and all in next sessions. Don't worry, we'll get that conversions and all. I'll explain there again. And if you observe, every column is having, along with the data type, is having null. So what do you mean by this null? I didn't specify this one as a null. Null is nothing but this column will accept the nulls. Even though if you don't pass any value into ID column, it will accept the record. Even though if you don't pass any value into name column, it will accept it. Even though if you don't pass any value into the date of birth column, it will accept it. But without ID, no employee will be there, right? So that ID column, mandatorily we need to pass one value into that ID column. If you don't pass any value into that ID column, it has to throw error saying that it is not a proper record. It is not a proper correct value. So what we have to do? So we need to convert that column into a mandatory column. That column mandatorily it has to accept the value. If you're passing any nulls, it has to throw error. So now my intention is I want to change the null type. So to change the null types, again the same syntax will remain same. Alter table name, which table you want to alter, and the column specifications. Example, alter table name employee, alter column ID int not null. That's it. So if you didn't specify that not null, then that column will treat it as a null column so that it will accept nulls. If you don't want to accept nulls into that column, then specify not null along with the data type. Now let me execute it. Now let's refresh the columns. Now you can find ID not null. So the column won't accept the nulls. Okay. Now, while creating the table, my client asked me to create the table with only 3 columns, that is ID, name, date of birth. Now he is asking me to add a new column into the table, gender. So how can I do that one? So to add a new column, there is no need to delete the table and then no need to create the table again with the required columns. So into an existing table itself, you can insert a new column. You can create a new column. Let's see how to add a new column into an existing table. To add new column. So again, alter table. Which table you are altering? Just specify the table name. This is the syntax. And what you're adding, add column name. So just specify the column name and column specifications. So the example one is, I want to alter a new column into employee table, gender column into employee table, right? So alter table employee, add gender varchar of 10. Now let's execute and see. Commands completed successfully. Now let's refresh the columns. You'll find the new column, that is gender, with data type varchar 10. Now when you have an option to add a new column into a table, existing table, then definitely you'll have an option to drop the column from the existing table, right? Now my intention is I want to drop a column from the table. So which column will drop now? Any column. The syntax will remain same. So here I'll drop date of birth column. Alter table. So which table you want to alter? Just specify the name of the table and drop column. Which column you want to drop? Just give the name of the table. Sorry. Example. So alter table name. I want to alter this employee table. By altering this employee table, I want to drop a column. Drop column date of birth. Date of birth. I think there is no space in between the column. Now let's execute and see now. Commands completed successfully. Now let's refresh the columns. See, date of birth column is dropped from the table. Now my intention is I want to drop the table. Let's see how to drop the table now. So to drop the table, drop table name. So my job is done with the table, so I'll drop it. So let's see, drop table. Which table you want to drop? I want to drop this employee table. So let me exit this one. Commands completed successfully. So let's see the tables. Let me refresh it. Now you can see the table is dropped from the server. So this is how we can drop the tables. This is how we can create and we can alter and we can drop the tables from the servers. Is it clear?